Hello, and welcome back to ATA Live. I am John Humphreys, the ATA, Australian Taxpayers Alliance, and we're about to listen along to the opposition's budget reply speech. So let's see if we're there yet. All right, here we go.
I give the call to the Honourable the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. Well, to Australians listening tonight, thank you very much for your time. Soon you'll have a say in determining the future of our great country. We live literally in the best country in the world, and we're the beneficiaries of what our forebears have built and defended. We love this country because it has forged us into a remarkable people. We're compassionate, we're stoic, we're fair, and we're quietly patriotic. We cherish this country because it affords opportunities like no other. But only, and I stress this point, if we're governed well. When Australia is governed badly, dreams and ambitions become beyond reach. And that's what's happened during the last 3 years of the Albanese government. In my travels across the country, Australians tell me that they're working hard, but they're not getting ahead. In Perth, a mum in a grocery store, in tears, told me how her husband and children couldn't keep their heads above water with the bills stacking up. In Adelaide, I spoke with a food manufacturer whose electricity prices had gone up by about 300%. In Victoria, I spoke with a supermarket employee, a woman in her 60s, who had a machete held against her throat during a robbery. In Brisbane, I listened to a young couple in their 30s who have moved back in with their parents because they simply can't buy a home, even though both of them are working overtime. Now, such stories have now become commonplace across our country. Stories of rent and mortgage stress, stories of power, shopping and insurance bills going through the roof. Stories of home ownership.
Unmute. How's that work?
And stories of it being increasingly difficult.
You're on. He's only giving waffle so far. We haven't missed any details.
Excellent.
And stories of crime on our streets. For so many Australians, aspiration has turned to anxiety, optimism to pessimism,
hopeful,
and national confidence to national uncertainty. The truth is Australians can't afford 3 more years of the Albanese government. Now, every election is important, but this election does matter more than others in recent history. It is a sliding doors moment for our nation. A returned Albanese government in any form won't just be another 3 bleak years. More economic mistakes will take a lot longer to recover from. Setbacks will be set in stone and our prosperity will be damaged for decades to come. But you have the power to change the path our country is on. You have the ability to reverse decline, and you have the opportunity to get our country back on track. You can do that by voting for your Liberal or Nationals candidates so that a new Dutton coalition government can be elected. And at this election, the choice could not be clearer. Tonight, I'll outline the choice Australians face at this election and our plan to fix Labor's mess. We have a positive plan to deliver. A stronger economy with lower inflation, cheaper energy, affordable homes, quality healthcare and safer communities. A plan to help you and your families. A plan to bring about a stronger, safer and better Australia.
Didn't hit the word.
A plan to usher in more confident, resilient and self-reliant people right across the country. And we need to accept that we live in a more dangerous and disruptive world. And to these ends tonight, I will announce new policies that a coalition government would implement. Tonight, I commit a coalition government to the following. We will introduce 4 critical pieces of legislation on the first sitting day in the next Parliament. 1, the Energy Price Reduction Bill. 2, the Lower Immigration and More Homes for Australians Bill. The Keep Australians Safe Bill. And the Guaranteed Funding for Health, Education and Essential Services Bill. This is my signal to the Australian people of what my priorities will be in government. In his 4th budget, like the previous 3, the Treasurer again painted a rosy picture of the economy. But Australians aren't silly. Your bills tell the true story of Labor's cost of living crisis. And here's the facts of the Albanese government's economic record. Rents are up by 18%. Housing is up by 14%. Groceries up by a staggering 30%. Electricity is up by 32%, and insurance is up for many households and businesses by 35%. Australians have experienced the longest household recession and the worst collapse in living standards in our country's history. Under Labor, interest rates have gone up 12 times, but only been cut once, and they've stayed higher for longer compared to other comparable nations. This budget makes clear that Labor was only able to deliver 2 surpluses, piggybacking off the former coalition government's strong economic management, as well as record commodity price windfalls. And now the outlook is one of deficits as far as the eye can see. For 3 years, Labor peddled the lie that they inherited $1 trillion of debt. Yet in the budget papers that we saw on Tuesday night, they confirm that the Labor Party will burden Australia with $1 trillion of debt as of next year. Tuesday's budget was one for the next 5 weeks, not one for the next 5 years. It was a shameless election voting exercise, not a plan for our country's future. It was about saving Prime Minister Albanese, not about you, and certainly not about safeguarding our nation. Jim Chalmers' so-called tax cut top-up is simply a tax cut cop-out. It's a cruel hoax. Now, Labor will spend $17 billion of taxpayers' money to give you back 70 cents a day in 15 months' time. And yet a family with a typical mortgage under this is $50,000 worse off. I think it's insulting, to be honest. Now, we oppose these tax cuts and will repeal them because we think there's a better way to provide assistance to Australians. We will provide immediate cost of living relief for Australians. A coalition government will halve the fuel excise for 12 months and then we'll review it. And we'll make sure that that comes in on the first day that our parliament sits. For a household with 1 car filling up once a week, that's a savings of about $14 a week, or around $700 over the year. For a household with 2 cars filling up once a week, that is a savings of $28 a week, or around $1,500 over 12 months. Compare that to 70 cents a day in 15 months' time. Now, working with industry will ensure that heavy vehicle road users also benefit from this measure, and we'll make sure the ACCC will ensure that the fuel excise cut will be passed on in full to consumers. The policy will cost $6 billion. Amidst Labor's cost of living pressures, charities are experiencing increased demand, including from Australians who never previously relied on that support. To scale up assistance and provide immediate relief, we will commit $50 million for food charities like Food Bank, Second Bite and Oz Harvest to expand their services and to include school breakfast programs. They approached the government with this plan and it was rejected in this budget. Of course, to get out of Labor's economic mess and to tackle Labor's cost of living crisis, we need hard decisions and a proper plan. The coalition government will do 3 things. First, we will rein in inflationary spending. We will reduce the cost of energy. And third, we will strengthen the economy so that it works for you. I just want to address each of those aspects in turn. Mr. Speaker, over 3 years,
Lots of good motherhood statements,
the
though.
Albanese government has increased spending as a share of the economy more than any government since the recession of the 1990s. Now, it's lifted spending by an extraordinary $425 billion. That's about $40,000 per Australian household. Now, much of this spending hasn't gone to essential services or generated economic activity. Rather, it's been inflationary, it's been ineffectual, and it's been wasteful. Such rapid and unrestrained spending is not only adding to the debt that our children will have to repay, but it's also keeping the pressure on inflation. And during a cost of living crisis, that's the last thing that you want. And the Reserve Bank Governor has independently pointed out this great failing in this bad government. A core inflation under this government has averaged more than double what it was under the coalition. Personal income taxes paid have also increased by about 24% under Labor. The average taxpayer is now paying $3,500 more tax this year alone, or for a dual income household, $7,000. And that's a big hit. I want Australian families to be making choices about what they will eat, not choices about whether they can eat or heat, which is the prospect facing many people, particularly pensioners and those on low incomes in our country right now. I want to make sure that we can fight the cost of living pressures because we need to get interest rates down. And to get interest rates down, we need, of course, to get inflation down. To get inflation down, we need to address its underlying causes. And that's just something the government hasn't done. We want to stop wasteful government spending. And tonight I announced that a coalition government will rein in key inflationary, ineffectual and imprudent spending, which has been a hallmark of this government.
Specifics,
We
mate?
will end the reckless $20 billion Rewiring the Nation Fund. We will stop the $10 billion Housing Australia Future Fund, which has not built a single additional home. We will scrap Labor's nearly $14 billion of production tax credits for green hydrogen because it is not going to work. We'll reverse Labor's increase of 41,000 Canberra public servants because it will save about $7 billion a year. That's money that we can provide back to the Australian people in frontline services. And the growth rate of public servants under this government in Canberra is about 3 times the rate it was under the Rudd-Gillard government. But I make this guarantee to the Australian people tonight. In line with our national interest, we will continue to invest in essential services and critical areas of the economy, like health and aged care, veteran support, the NDIS, Indigenous affairs, childcare and defence. We won't cut frontline service delivery roles. We will ensure that the services Australians rely on are sustainable. Under Labor, you will be guaranteed of a number of things, but one thing I'm sure of is more reckless and wasteful spending, which will cause interest rates and inflation to stay higher for longer. And that means you'll pay more for everything. More for food, more for rents, more for your mortgage, more for power, and more for insurance. You'll continue to pay more tax too. But under the coalition, we will fight cost of living pressures at their source. At the very centre of Labor's cost of living crisis is, of course, the skyrocketing cost of energy. And that's due, of course, to Anthony Albanese and Chris
Let's see.
Bowen's
I'm hopeful they might do
reckless
something on
renewables
this.
only policy train wreck.
Burn coal.
As every Australian knows, energy is the economy.
If he doesn't do tax, he
Australians
has
are
to do
paying some of the
energy.
highest power prices in the world. Indeed, up to 3 times more than
He said there's 4 pillars. The first one was energy cost
And the
reduction.
Albanese government has broken its
We'll see.
core election promise when it comes to
Can't just be
energy.
nuclear.
Your electricity bill
That'll
hasn't
be
gone
gas.
down by $275, as
Forcing
Labor
gas
promised
companies to pay to
on
Australians first.
97
Sell to
occasions.
Australians.
The Prime Minister and the Treasurer refuse even to mention that word, even though they looked you in the eye and said that they would bring your power prices down by $275 each year. As Australians can attest, they're now paying more than $1,300 than what Labor promised in their energy bills. And I think the point to make is it's not just homeowners and renters who are paying higher power bills, it's farmers, it's business owners, it's cafe owners, it's manufacturers too. Across the economy, it's costing more to grow food, more to produce goods, more to store the food and the goods, and certainly to deliver services. And those costs are just passed on to Australian consumers, which is why Australians are feeling the crunch at the moment. I want Australians to be putting items in their shopping trolley, not putting them back onto supermarket shelves. I want businesses to be able to hire more staff, not to be putting more money aside to pay ever-increasing power bills. Now, Mr Speaker, gas is the key in our country, as it is around the developed world, to manufacturing, to making electricity and to keeping the lights on. But the Albanese government has stalled projects from getting off the ground and
He's already
created
committed to
a
the
national
Northwest
gas
Shelf
emergency
project.
due to insufficient supply. We now know that in our country, Victoria is about to spend money building an import terminal to bring gas in to Victoria, to import gas into Victoria. Under Labor, gas prices have gone up for households and businesses by 34% and 43% respectively. The Coalition understands what Labor won't. You can't run a full-time and functioning economy using part-time and unreliable power. Under Labor, the energy crisis and therefore your pain will continue. Bills will keep going up because the cost of putting out 28,000 kilometres of new transmission lines will just be passed on to Australians. Our energy grid will become more unstable with a greater reliance on sometimes on power, which equals blackouts and brownouts. And you can expect a lot of energy rationing in Australia under an Albanese government re-elected. Under the Coalition, energy will become affordable and reliable again, where we use a mix of technologies, which include always-on power, to firm up the renewable, sometimes on power. And the only way to drive down power prices quickly is to ramp up domestic gas production. And tonight I announce our National Gas Plan. This plan will prioritise domestic gas supply, address shortfalls and reduce energy prices for Australians. This is all about ensuring Australian gas is for Australians. We will immediately introduce an East Coast gas reservation. This will require a proportion between 50 to 100 petajoules of spot cargo exports to be delivered to the domestic market. This will secure an additional 10 to 20% of the East Coast demand, gas which would otherwise be exported for use in other markets by consumers in those countries.
Like Japan, to sell it back
But
to
our
us.
gas needs to be first and foremost for our people. Gas sold on the domestic market will be decoupled from overseas markets to protect Australia from international price shocks. And this will drive down new wholesale domestic gas prices from around $14 per gigajoule to under $10 per gigajoule. And this is just the start. We will immediately audit development-ready projects with a focus on the southern states. We will fast-track a decision on Western Australia's Northwest Shelf project. The government has delayed a decision on that project conveniently until the 31st of May, which happens to be after the election. So good luck in WA. We will halve approval times. We will defund the activist-led Environmental Defenders Office, which has been disgraced and which has obstructed projects. We will accelerate new investment into gas projects by reinstating a $300 million strategic basin plan and include gas in the capacity investment scheme. We will invest $1 billion into a critical gas infrastructure fund and increase gas pipeline and storage capacity. We will put in place use it or lose it stipulations for gas drilling companies so offshore gas fields are not locked up for years. And we will ensure that we have a fit-for-purpose gas trigger to safeguard supply. This plan, Mr Speaker, will lower wholesale gas prices, which will flow across the economy. Our National Gas Plan is expected to push prices down for new gas sales to below $10 per gigajoule, compared to the $14 in the market today. Energy prices will always be lower under a coalition government. A coalition government will also secure our nation's energy security for decades to come and over the longer term. We will join the other 19 top economies in the world in adopting proven zero-emissions nuclear power. This is one of the most visionary and necessary policies put forward in our country's history. It was supported by Bob Hawke and it's supported by John Howard and other leaders of our nation. And it will underpin our energy security for the next century. Our plan has been independently costed at 44% cheaper than Labor's plan. Labor has never been able to dispute that outcome. And what it means is that there's a savings of $263 billion for Australians. If a plan is cheaper, electricity prices will be cheaper, as fewer costs, of course, are passed on to consumers. Nuclear power's high yield of energy and small footprint means that there's no need to carpet our national parks, prime agricultural land and coastlines with industrial-scale renewables. The Coalition has the only energy policy which protects our environment and safeguards the livelihoods of regional Australia. Mr Speaker, the exorbitant cost of energy is one reason why a record 29,000 small businesses have gone insolvent under Labor. It's one reason why there's been a threefold increase in the number of manufacturers who have closed under Mr Albanese's watch. But another reason is Labor's excessive regulation and interference in the economy. Sectors critical for our economy, like mining, manufacturing, forestry, fishing and agriculture, have been crippled by Labor's weaponisation of environment, industry, IR and cultural heritage laws. And we're seeing industries simply pack up and go offshore, and international partners withdraw investment from our country. For all of Anthony Albanese's talk of a future made in Australia, the opposite is actually the fact. Less is being made in Australia under this government's watch, and more is being made abroad. The last 3 years are a lesson. No government can subsidise the economy to success. Under Labor, we'll continue to see a hollowing out of our economy. Industries and businesses will continue to collapse in record numbers or simply move operations offshore, which means that we lose those jobs. Under the Coalition, we will build a stronger economy.
Yes, but how?
Not only by getting power prices down, but also by ripping up as much red and green tape as possible. Tonight, I commit to removing regulatory burdens where we can, where there's duplication across local, state and federal government during a first-term coalition
Department of
government.
Education.
My intention is to make Australia
Inshallah.
a mining, agricultural, construction and manufacturing powerhouse once again. The revenue generated from these revived sectors will create more money to build new infrastructure, to fund health and education, and importantly, to equip our defence forces. In addition to backing our natural strengths, we will encourage new areas of the economy, like artificial intelligence, like automation, like cybersecurity and space, bio and nanotechnologies. AUKUS 2 has the potential to foster a new arm of our economy and transform our civil industrial base. We will spend taxpayers' money wisely in a manner which has an economic multiplying effect, a way in which it generates productivity and can attract new investment. And that's better for you, for your family, and it'll create jobs for your children and grandchildren. And we will curtail union militancy in workplaces. We will revert to a simple definition of a casual worker, the corrupt and disgraced CFMEU, which has donated $11 million to the Labor Party, that in turn has seen the Labor Party turn a blind eye to them and their illegal conduct. It will be deregistered. And the construction industry watchdog will be restored so that we can have safety again on big building sites. New anti-racketeering laws will be legislated, and a dedicated Australian Federal Police-led task force will tackle the criminal elements in our building sector that are ripping off Australians and undermining productivity. Prime Minister, I would never tolerate seeing a member of a union, or any person for that matter, kicking a woman on camera and not even commenting in relation to it. It was a disgrace, and it was a disgrace that this government allowed it to happen. And it's a common practice from the CFMEU. Reviving growth, Mr Speaker, also means having the back of small business, including tax relief. We've got tax relief coming for small business. We will increase the instant asset write-off from $1,000 under this government to $30,000, and we're going to make that arrangement ongoing. We'll provide a deduction of up to $20,000 per year for small businesses for business-related meal expenses, which is also a much-needed shot in the arm for struggling cafes, restaurants and pubs. If your kids or grandkids work in a local cafe or in a local pub or club, this will see them get more hours and have more secure employment. It will allow a local real estate agency or a builder to take staff to a local cafe to celebrate a big sales event, or simply to say thank you to their hardworking employees. It creates jobs and it supports the struggling hospitality sector. I want small businesses to be taking risks, calculated risks, not shutting up shop.
Those are both old policies.
Reviving growth and preparing our economy for the future also means supporting skills development. Tonight, I announced that a coalition government will set a target of 400,000 apprentices and trainees in training across Australia. Our plan is to restore targeted and proven incentive payments for employers to hire and train an apprentice. We will provide small and medium businesses with $12,000 to support them to put on a new apprentice or trainee in critical skills areas for the first 2 years of their training. it will have a particular focus in the building and construction sector. Mr Speaker, addressing Labor's cost of living crisis and energy crisis is just the start. In its first 2 years, the government brought in 1 million people through the migration program. That's 70% more migrants than in any 2-year period in Australia's history. And of course, there'll be consequences. And yet, after 3 years in power, the Albanese government hasn't delivered a single additional new home built under its failed housing policies. Australians are generous and welcoming people, but they want migration to be sustainable and the government to be in control of it. Labor is neither in control of migration, nor has it kept migration at sustainable levels, and Australians know it. I don't want young Australians locked out of the property market or having to rely on the bank of mum and dad. I want to see fewer Australians homeless and more Australians in homes. Mr Speaker, under Labor, migration will continue to put pressure on housing, on infrastructure and on services. But under the Coalition, we will cut the migration intake to free up housing and restore the great Australian dream of home ownership. We will cut the permanent migration program by 25%. We will ban foreign investors and temporary residents from purchasing existing Australian homes for a period of 2 years. We will set stricter caps on foreign students to relieve stress on rental markets. And we will invest $5 billion in essential infrastructure to get stalled housing projects up and going. And it's going to create 500,000 new homes. We'll allow for first home buyers to access up to $50,000 of their super for a home deposit because it's better to get into a home sooner. When a government doesn't have any achievements to speak about, which is the reality for this government, it resorts to smears and scare campaigns. There's no greater sign of the Albanese government's desperation than its Medi-Scare campaign, Labor's third attempt in less than a decade. But while Labor peddles falsehoods, we'll remind Australians of the facts. On this government's watch, bulk billing nationally has fallen by 11%. There's 41 million fewer bulk billing episodes with GP services under this government. And more than 270 GP practices have closed under this government's watch. Australians should never have to choose between seeing a doctor or paying their bills. Under Labor, Australians will have ongoing pressures on the health system, but under the Coalition, we will deliver quality health care. We will invest $9.4 billion into health. That includes incentivising junior doctors, as I announced last year, to work as GPs to address the current shortages at your local clinic. We will boost Medicare bulk billing. We will invest in hospitals, especially in high population growth areas where there's the biggest strain on services. We will guarantee cheaper medicines and lower the pharmaceutical benefit scheme co-payment to $25, and we'll invest $500 million into women's health. And we'll double the subsidised mental health sessions from 10 to 20 and make this arrangement permanent. Many young Australians require access to mental health services in any given year. And tonight I announced that a coalition government will invest an additional $400 million into youth mental health services. We will expand the remit of the National Centre for Excellence in Youth Mental Health, which I created in 2014, into a national institute. We will boost regional services and expand treatment to Australia at the forefront of youth mental health treatment in the world. We will continue to support the world-leading Medical Research Future Fund, which I established as the then Health Minister. There is now more than $20 billion in that fund, and it's providing support to our specialists all around the country, to scientists, to researchers, to labs, all of them working on incredible projects. And that funding will continue to provide them with support and Australians with hope. Mr Speaker, in my travels across the country, Australians tell me they've never been more worried about crime and division in our community. It started with the Prime Minister's Voice referendum, which sought to divide our country by ancestry and race. He then left a vacuum of leadership following the crime wave in Alice Springs and the anti-Semitism on the steps of the Sydney Opera House. All too often, the Prime Minister is too weak, too late and too equivocal. This government has released 300 hardcore criminals from immigration detention into the community, with more than a third having reoffended against Australian citizens. It granted tourist visas to 3,000 people from a terrorist-controlled war zone conducted without security checks that should have been put in place. It's failed to deter people smugglers trying to reach our shores by illegal boats. It's turned a blind eye when our military personnel have been endangered. And it didn't stand up for our country when Chinese communist warships entered our waters without notice. And it relied on Virgin Australia pilots to alert us to the Chinese Navy's live fire exercise off our coast. Australia should be a country where people live without fear and without worrying about the future.
He struggles a bit, hey?
Under Labor, you'll get the same weakness of leadership that has
He's not the
compounded
smoothest
crime
orator. He's
and
no
emboldened
Trump.
anti-Semitism on our streets. You'll get a nation that is less safe and less secure. But under the coalition, we will provide
Not even an
the
Elon
moral
Musk.
and political leadership needed to restore law, order and
Doesn't
justice.
have much stage presence.
We will
It's unfair to
establish a
judge him on that, I
dedicated
guess. But,
anti-Semitism task
you know,
force
people do
to
anyway.
turn the tide of this scourge of hatred.
He's
Every
been delivering
Australian should be
speeches for over a decade.
equally treated.
He could have polished
We
up
will
by
work
now.
with states and territories to develop national
It's
uniform
not someone who
life laws.
inspires you to keep listening.
We
I keep
will
dozing
toughen
off.
bail laws to stop domestic violence
There's
offenders.
so much waffle
We
between
will
the
again
numbers and
stop
the
the
actual
boats just as
main
we did in
points.
2013. And we
And by
will
the time he
again
makes a
deport
point, I'd already tuned
dangerous
out. And I go, wait, oh, he said
non-citizen
something.
criminals. Just as I did as Home Affairs Minister in cancelling 6,300 visas of murderers, of sex offenders and drug traffickers, something this government hasn't continued. We will again invest in defence to play our part as a credible partner to deter aggression and to maintain peace. We've already committed to $3 billion of additional funding to reinstate the 4th Squadron of the F-35 Joint Strike Fighters cancelled by Labor. Our plan is to energise our domestic defence industry and to retool the ADF with asymmetric capabilities to deter a larger adversary. Mr Speaker, during the election campaign, we will announce our significant funding commitment to defence, a commitment which, unlike Labor's, will be commensurate with the challenges of our times. The Prime Minister of our country and the Deputy Prime Minister, the Minister for Defence, tells Australians regularly that we live in the most precarious period, the most dangerous period since the end of the Second World War. What leader of a country says that and then doesn't do anything about it? We will nurture pride and unity in our country. We will provide support to the Australian Defence Force to keep us safe today and into generations ahead, at a time when we most need it. That starts, of course, by making sure that we don't fail young Australians. And I think this is an incredibly important point. A coalition government will restore a curriculum that teaches the core fundamentals in our classrooms, a curriculum that cultivates critical thinking, responsible citizenship and common sense. Mr Speaker, this election is as much about leadership as it is about policy, and the choice is clear at the next election. I will be a strong leader with a steady hand. I will make the tough decisions, not shirk them. I will put the national interest first. I will lead with conviction, not walk both sides of the
Playing
street.
into the focus group
And I have
feedback.
real-life experience to demonstrate it. As a veteran of the police force who dedicated 9 years to protecting Australians, especially women and children, a small business owner who started and successfully ran businesses, someone who came from a working-class background and knows the value of hard work and the aspiration that drives Australians. A parent, along with my wife, Kiralee, who understands the family is the most important unit in our society. I want to give a shout out to Kiralee tonight, who's just had surgery on her wrist and is at home watching with Rebecca, Harry and Tom, unless maths clashes with this broadcast. I've been an assistant treasurer in our country. I've been a former Minister for Health. I've been a Minister for Immigration, Minister for Home Affairs and Minister for Defence, which was an enormous honour. I lead a united and incredibly capable team. We're ready to govern. We're ready to deliver. A stronger economy with lower inflation, cheaper energy, affordable homes, quality healthcare and safer communities. And we will govern with respect for the views, values and vision of everyday Australians. Australians are worse off under the Albanese government, and Australians cannot afford 3 more years of this bad Labor government. I say to Australians tonight, at this election, you can make the right choice. A better choice for you, a better choice for your family, and a better choice for your country. Together, let's build a stronger, safer and better Australia, and let's together get our country back on track.
Oh, that doesn't let you on with me when I do that. Well, that was a bit underwhelming.
Yeah.
Let's see. That's not the right way.
So there's some good stuff in there, but I don't know if there's anything in there that combats the whole we voted against tax reform.
Yeah. Well, not on that front, no. So he's just gone a totally different direction. I'm leaving it on in the background, seeing if they bring someone in to interview, and we can bring it up if they do. But anyway, what's your? Oh, you already kind of gave it there, but what's your impression of that? What's the good, the bad, and the ugly?
I think there's some really good stuff in there around, drill baby drill, around the gas stuff. I think the meaningful. It's funny though, 14 to 10 doesn't sound like a big difference when it talks about dropping the gigajoule amount from 14 to
like
10.
I mean, I think gas does, as I understand it, as the gas price being sold onto our wholesale markets has a very significant influence on the energy prices. So that would indicate something like a 30% cut in your power prices.
Yeah, because obviously when
That's
it's peaking and peaking comes on, and then that's the biggest cost, and so then that's what everything gets charged at the most expensive thing, which is gas at the moment. So it would bring it down when we've got gas peaking generation. I like decoupling from the international markets when it comes to gas, because that's one of the things. We are such a resource-rich nation. The way Albo keeps banging on around, international events have affected energy prices, international this, international that. I'm like, we should have enough sovereign capability with our own energy supply that it doesn't matter what's happening in the rest of the world. We have coal and gas and uranium, and we can keep our lights on without our prices going crazy. So
yeah, I think that'll play well. It'll be interesting because it won't play great with the mining industry, but what's the mining industry going to do? Like back labor? So I couldn't help feel with a lot of this stuff, his play is basically just to do just enough to make people go, oh well, better than labor, and then abandon those people and just move on to the next group. Because I feel, there is just enough in here that you'd say, I feel dirty saying this, and I understand a lot of people just running around saying, I'm on Team Blue, so I got to be on Team Blue. Rah rah, it's great, it's great. It kind of sucks. I mean, it's on tax policy. If you're just looking at tax policy, as things stand, Labor has a better tax policy. Their policy is like just objectively better economic policy, and it's more small government. It's more libertarian. I mean,
I mean, the
I
fact
can't
that
believe I have to say that.
His big counter to the tax thing is we'll drop the fuel excise for 12 months.
For 1 year. I saw this going on. When I saw the announcement, I wondered who'd fall for it. And you see a bunch of people on X. I don't know if they fell for it or if they're just, Liberal Party hacks and partisans and bots or what have you. But this idea that I'll do you a swap. I'll give you a 1 year cut in your fuel excise in exchange for a permanently higher income tax. If someone just came and said it like that, who's going to say yes? And then it turns out if you're a family with two adults in it, it's for 1 year, you get nearly $30 off your petrol per week if you drive a lot, or you get $10 off the next year and $20 off the year after for Labor. So Labor's tax cut, once fully introduced, is a similar size one. It's 20 versus 30, right? So, but it goes forever.
Yeah, exactly. And they can play it's for everyone, not just the people in the suburbs, the rich people with the houses and the cars, like for the migrants and the students and the apartment livers and everything. Like they all get the tax cut. Versus,
I don't mind that part of it, so I'm not going to go after him for that. I do think that
but I'm just saying that
cars are far too punished, and most people do drive.
It's an attack angle for Labor to use, because I'll say, well, we're for everyone. Yeah. They're just for some people. Like they went after the rich people.
I agree with that, but I'm not fussed with the attack angle. I'm sitting here saying that, as things stand, I agree with Labor. I mean, I'm not saying like, oh, this is the angle. This is what we could. This is what they could say. This is not something I could say. This is something I am saying. Their tax policy sucks. I mean,
what was the tax policy?
Better.
They had no income tax reform.
Oh, no, they're going to put income tax up. So Labor's policy has already now been passed. It's into law now.
Yes.
So the Dutton proposal...
They said they'll repeal it, didn't they?
Well, they're going to try to. It'll be interesting to see how they do it. I'm not sure how they'll do that with, they'll need the Green support, I guess. But the Liberal policy is literally to say, we will increase your income tax rates permanently, but don't worry, we will give you a 12-month discount on fuel tax in exchange for permanently higher income tax. And I don't know. I don't care whether it sells or it doesn't sell or whether it's a line of attack. I'm just bloody depressed that, look, on balance, what Liberal has to say about energy policy, like letting gas rip and then bringing in nuclear eventually, it's better than Labor, but it's because Labor keeps throwing billions after billions at this renewable boondoggles. So,
green hydrogen.
Yeah. And look at the Liberal policy on accelerated depreciation. Most people roll their eyes or fall asleep and don't know what it means. I think it is legitimately a very good policy. I'd go further with that one as well. But at least if someone takes a step towards your position, just like I said to Labor when they took a step towards my position, they deserve some kudos. And the same for the Liberals on their accelerated depreciation. So they've got a few other things. And probably on balance, you add everything up. The Liberals are slightly less bad than Labor still. But God, I don't want to have to frame it like that. I want there to be a good guy.
Yeah, this is the problem with running small target, and they've run small target for so long. Now they've got no runway to actually be big target and get that settled in the market, because their one big target thing was nuclear, and they ran that so badly. Then they've been criticized so heavily over it that they're kind of on the back foot, and they're downplaying that one now against gas and other things.
Oh no, I disagree with you a bit there. Like you'll always see the criticism, and we watch politics. We'll see more than most because most people involved with politics are left wing. So if you read in the news, of course they're going to get criticism. I think that was a good policy to mark a point of differentiation. It allowed them to not have many other points of differentiation right up to the election, because they could always fall back and say, no, look, we have a bloody big point of differentiation. And then I think this gas bit is just about their responding to the fact that, all right, nuclear, great idea, might fix our power prices in 20 years. You got anything before like the year 2040? Like it's, that's where gas comes in.
I think my issue to clarify on that is not that it's more they've been battered by the attacks. So they took the attack, they put out a big thing, they got attacked, and it's actually changed their steer, and it's actually made them a little more skittish around coming out with other big things. I think they're frightened of being too big, too dangerous and scary because of all the TDS, and everyone's freaking out because Trump's trying to change so much so quickly, and Aussies are so afflicted by that. So they're like, we need to play gently. So we're not going to go with big policy and big things. We are just going to try and be slightly better than Labor.
Yeah, look at TDS is an interesting one because that's probably going to hurt him. But look, I suspect that the Liberal hardheads came into this thinking, look, we're only picking 2 or 3 points of differentiation. That's it. Nuclear is one of them. Of course, they got criticized. I suspect they fully expect to be criticized. And since they've introduced the nuclear policy, they went up in the polls. So I think they looked at that and thought, phew, we took a risk. We introduced a scary policy that was going to get us criticized. We got criticized and we didn't go down. We got away with it. Great. Let's lock that in. That's one point of differentiation. And I think they were always going to minimize other points of differentiation. But, apparently people are happy with this. What is this? Even a libertarian friend saying Dutton's on fire. I don't know if they mean he's burning down or if he's actually good. But
or was he referencing
other people are disagreeing with me. So they are happy with what he's done. Question, can we trust him? I don't know. Maybe I'm just getting too cynical in my old age, but trust him with what? He just promised to do perpetually more
than all the things. He had 4 things. It was he had energy, immigration and housing, health.
Keep us safe and keep spending more on the welfare state.
Yeah.
He calls it health and essential services, but that's just, the welfare state writ large. Look, he was always going to do that. I mean, I'm a bit disappointed by the lack of courage constantly on everyone in politics because they just keep sleepwalking us to a fiscal nightmare eventually. But I didn't actually expect him to come out and say, look, he's going to reform the way Medicare works. That was always going to be an unlikely one. But he's come out.
No,
his language is basically exactly the same as the Labour's language.
He's been scared by all the Medicare stuff, and he's like, no, I have to commit to all these things because otherwise I'll get bashed for it. But where was some 3 stages of tax cuts reform? Where was something a little bit bigger around income, like sort of bracket creep and income tax bracketing? There was room for him to sort of, like you've just said and discussed, make some changes that aren't going to be like earth-shattering, scare people, how are we going to pay for all of this? I mean, it still does my head in that from a government point of view, when they say we're going to tax you less, they're going to go, that's going to come at a cost of $6 billion or whatever. It's like any other business doesn't say, oh, well, like they don't talk about reduced income as, oh, this is costing us money now. There's this expectation from the government that your money is actually their money. And so as soon as they choose to take less of it from you, it's costing the government. No, just spend within your means.
That's very true. The language is very telling. And I mean, the left is very good at framing the language we use. And then the right just sort of falls into line with using that language, which works against us, which is why I'm kind of frustrated at this whole income tax narrative now, where the Liberals and the ABC and the hard left and the communists and all the people who support the Liberal Party are coming out with this line of Labor's tax cuts, they're pretty small. And that's why you shouldn't have tax cuts. Wait, what? They're talking down the possibility of tax cuts. They're using Labor, like ABC lines. Like the ABC is coming out saying this could be inflationary. Liberals, oh, income tax cuts are inflationary. No, they're not. And they say, oh, can we afford this? And the Liberals are going, yeah, ABC is right. Maybe we can't afford tax cuts. What happens in a couple of years' time if the Liberals ever regrow a backbone and decide they want to do income tax reform? All of their own language is going to be coming back to hit them here.
Because they talk about
accepting. And as a cost, yeah, you're right. The idea of income tax cuts is a cost presupposes that the government has first right to your money, and that that they are allowing you to keep a bit more. But
right, it should be framed as we are going to not. It's not going to cost us $6 billion in the budget. It means we are going to. Australians are going to keep $6 billion of extra money in their back pockets to use in the economy to grow, to build, to be successful, to live and be prosperous. Like, where was any of the Liberals' "we believe" statements in tonight's speech? I don't think they were there.
So I think this is a bit of an issue for you. It is for Brian. Brian's not here to defend himself, so you're our Neo, Brian. The immigration stuff. So I think Liberals seem to be trying to be a little bit less bad than Labor on this issue. But he said he didn't say anything about the NOM, the net overseas migration, but he did say a 25% cut in the permanent migration. Is that enough? Is that what the voters are looking for?
I think I don't know. Right-wing Twitter would have net negative migration for a few years, right? That would be their ultimate plan. The issue is we've got overcapacity. We're overcapacity for housing, for services, for infrastructure, for traffic, for you name it. And that's one of the issues we have. And so to just say we're going to slow it down doesn't address the immediate problem. And they go, oh, well, we're now going to do this to build more houses and build more houses. Houses take 6 to 12 months to build, and there's already a backfall and a shortage on that. Plus, and you hear often guys, I think Matt Barry talks about the whole 50K in super. So now you're just giving people more money to grow demand. Like now there's going to be more demand because people are going to have this additional deposit to spend, which is just going to jack everything up further. So you're actually inflating demand. And so would you do that? Would you supply?
Independent Senator, Senator Dave Right Now. I don't actually know your surname, so I guess it's Right Now. So Senator Dave Right Now, how are you voting on the Liberal Party's using your super for housing bill? Up or down?
I haven't. I need to roll all the numbers and look into that more deeply. No, my gut instinct. My gut instinct from what I've heard.
Right here.
Yeah. No, my gut instinct is it's probably not the best idea. I think we want to help people get into houses. And look, I benefited from the old first home buyers grant a million years ago, because I'm that old. So I realized that I was a beneficiary of being old and having lower house prices and scoring a government grant at the right time pre GFC, But I think there is an issue with the super jacking demand. Now, I think superannuation reform in general is a bigger discussion. You go, well, that's my money. Why is my money being locked up for long term?
Well, your last point there gets to like. I would vote for it. I think it's a good policy, but not as a housing policy. A housing policy, I think, is pretty neutral, right? Yes, it'll increase demand. Increased demand will make all houses go up, but you've got more money to buy the higher priced house, and the higher priced house means that developers can develop a few more houses. So, all right, I get it.
Ponzi scheme keeps Ponziing.
I'm not too fussed about that one either way, but it's as super policy. I like their housing policy as a super policy, not a housing policy. I don't think super should be compulsory in the first place, and anything that allows us to access a little bit more of our own money, I think is a good superannuation policy. But so yeah, I wouldn't do it for the reasons they're saying, but
and this this is always one of the issues, and I think that conservatives versus libertarians versus lefties come to when it's like personal responsibility, and at what level are people able to be personally responsible, and what are the consequences, and how do you have adequate incentives and consequences and supports to help people be responsible without ending up with a large population that are living on the street wrapped in boxes of newspapers and stuff, like late in life as old people, because they weren't encouraged to be responsible in the moment, because you got money and cost things, and so you just spend it all, and then you rely on pensions and so on at the end of life.
Yeah, this will sound heartless, and I'm fine to have that reputation, but I don't mean it to sound heartless. I think it's actually just true. Look, the only way to incentivize responsibility is that people have to have very different consequences from good vis-a-vis bad decisions. So you have to actually suffer from bad decisions. You can't take away all the suffering from bad decisions and then just say, oh, look, I know it doesn't make any difference to you now, but can you please double plus promise, pinky promise that you'll make good decisions? They can say it, they won't do it. I mean, we've got increasing homelessness now, and our welfare state is bigger than ever. I lived in Cambodia for a couple of years, and there are homeless people there. There's not that many. You walk around, San Francisco has more homeless people than Kampong Cham, where I used to live for a while. People, they know if the consequences, they have to end up being that guy on the street, because there are some guys on the street. Everyone wants to not be that guy. And they know if they screw around, that could be them. That is the incentive to make better decisions. And we take away that incentive, and then people make worse decisions, and we act shocked, like, oh dear, we changed the incentives. I thought that would do nothing.
And one of the, I suppose, the lies is that super is going to be enough anyway, right? With the way inflation in the economy is outpacing.
Well, of course, the current trick is everyone can just, when they're at retirement age, they can take out all of their super in one hit, use it for a big 2-year long party around the world trip, and then once it's all used up, just go back and live on the age pension. So I mean, that's as long as you have you own your house, you take all of your super, blow it on a party for as long as you can have a party, and then if you're still alive, eke out survival, living in your nice mansion with your age pension, which still enough to live on if you own your house.
Yeah,
and that's my plan. My plan is just blow all my super on a party.
It is one of those tensions that you'll get across the electorate, though, is that personal responsibility and consequence, especially when it's a deferred consequence. Like when you're our age and risking being 70 and homeless and living on a street, that's an entire lifetime away. Like, right? Like that's so far away. I'll sort it out by then. I'll work it out. It'll be fine. But I really want to buy this shiny thing now. I really want to spend my money on this now. This is a better thing. Oh,
sorry, just interrupting us here to.
Yes, go.
Identified.
Coming from where?
So,
Could you just specify?
Well, again, we'll work with the industry to work that out, because it depends on what gas we can bring online. Narrabri in New South Wales, for example, is I think a project that's been delayed for a long time, and it will depend on where you can bring gas in from which part of the country. But predominantly, you're going to be coming from Queensland, and I want to make sure that we can have a conversation with Victoria about discovering more gas there, because I think Victorians have had enough of their economy being destroyed by the Labor Party.
Let me just ask you this, because it's very important that any discussion about gas is anchored in facts and detail, because claims about what anyone's going to do in relation to gas just don't tend to work out. In relation to those fields where you say that you're going to be able to ramp up gas so quickly to reduce the price of gas by the end of this calendar year, how are you going to do that in the southern states where you've got Labor governments who are not in support of the policy that you just put forward?
But Sarah, we've got capacity in the market now. So outside of the foundation contracts, gas that's being sold into the international market, that's the point I made tonight. So extra supply is incredibly important, and you make a good point. For some, it will take time to come on. I'm hoping that if there's a change of government in Victoria, and there's a very different conversation with business and even within the Labor government in Victoria about bringing more gas on. Peter Malinauskas, the South Australian Premier, is very keen to develop more in the mining space, because he knows that the South Australian economy is dependent upon it. So I think it's a different picture as you go across each of the states, but I want to be a Prime Minister that can see restoration of manufacturing in our country so that we can grow jobs and economic activity, and we'll work with the different state premiers to achieve that outcome.
Let me move on. You've also announced that you'll scrap the government's investment in the Rewiring the Nation project that is money to build transmission lines to move green energy around the country. Will you, in doing that, renege on important existing contracts?
No, where we've got contracts in place, we're obviously first and foremost to honour those contracts.
But you've said you're going to cancel the fund. That fund has already got money put aside for those projects, one of which has already begun construction, others of which are expected. You're saying those are all secure.
Yeah, and the second point that I was going to make is that the beauty of our policy, where we bring nuclear into the system from 2035 and gas bridges the gap between now and 2035 to bring prices down, is that we don't have the distribution network requirements. So at a coal-fired power station now, there's already poles and wires obviously distributing the electricity that's generated into households and into businesses. The madness of Anthony Albanese's policy is that they need to create 28,000 kilometres of new poles and wires and to replace that which is there at the moment. It'll never happen. Let's be frank about it. So yes, we need to put in some poles and wires, but not to the extent that Labor's talking about. And look, when you have a look at your electricity
So can you
bill,
just be clear about that?
Just let me make this point. When you have a look at your electricity bill and you see the network charges, you can see in there how much now that is making up of your bill. A lot of that is added to your bottom line electricity cost because of the renewable projects that the Prime Minister's got in place. Now, renewables are fantastic and they're needed in our system, but we can't pretend any longer that they can be 100% of the system.
Now, are you prepared to crater investment certainty in Australia as a green energy superpower?
Defund the ABC.
If the Prime Minister's claiming that, I'd love to see the stats behind it, because investment is racing out of this country at a rate of knots. There's been a threefold increase in the closure of manufacturing businesses. Tomago is at significant risk of closure. Smelters in our country are talking about closing. Now, let's in Anthony Albanese and Chris Bowen's world, we're going to pretend that we don't need aluminium in our society, in construction and across the building sector. It's nonsense. We are going to need it. And why would we export the jobs, increase the amount of emissions in production in Malaysia or somewhere else in the world? We should be supporting that industry. I want to revitalise that industry, and we can do that if we've got secure 24/7 permanent baseload power, which we can do. I mean, Labor governments at the moment are extending coal-fired power stations because if not, the lights go out. But then there's gas, and we get more gas into the system, which is our announcement tonight, which brings pressure down off prices. And then we bring the nuclear into the system, which is exactly what Keir Starmer is doing in the United Kingdom.
Let me ask you a question about.
And I'll just finish. Sorry, I'll just finish on this point. China at the moment is building 29 nuclear power stations. We're the only
also
country
building
in the top
coal.
20 economies in the world not signed up to nuclear.
And making vast investments in renewable energy.
And building 2 coal-fired power stations a week.
Let me just ask you this question. Will the first budget, let's assume that you are successful in the coming election, will the first budget that you produce include the first expenditure on nuclear reactors?
Well, they'll include the expense that is required by law or by the budget rules to be included. And we won't change that. We won't deviate from what we had in government or what the government's now got in place.
You started suggesting...
It'll be properly accounted for. Just on the point of cost, again, it's a really important point, because under our plan, we've had it independently costed by a company that has been used by the Labor Party in South Australia and the federal government, probably the most preeminent economist in the country, Frontier Economics, when it comes to energy policy modelling. They say that our system, our plan is 44% cheaper than Labor. And the fact is that Labor's plan of renewables only is $263 billion more than what our plan costs. Now, that means cheaper electricity prices for consumers, and it will underpin the energy needs for our country for the next century.
Now, I want to move on to immigration. What's happened to your desire to set a figure for net overseas migration? Nothing in your speech this evening.
We'll announce the non-figure in due course, but I've just...
What does due course mean?
Well, over the course of the next few weeks in the run-up to election
Tell
day,
the price,
we've announced is we'll reduce
the
permanent migration intake by 25%.
It's not a happy
Tell us
number.
how you're going to do that.
Well, we'll show you the composition and the breakdown of that again before the election. But Australians know that this government has brought in 1 million people over 2 years.
Just bring you back to that question, because obviously time is getting short. How are you going to do that? How are you going to bring down the permanent migration program by 25%? Because skilled workers, for example, who we want to attract, they deserve to bring their families with them.
Well, we'll prioritise what is in our country's best interest. We've got the greatest country in the world. Millions of people want to come here, and we've been a great beneficiary from the migrant story in our country. As Prime Minister, I want to talk more about the success of migration to our country, but I'm not pretending, like the Prime Minister is, that people are sleeping rough tonight because they can't find accommodation. I'm not pretending, like the Prime Minister is, that there are many millions of Australians, young Australians, older Australians, who are worried about either buying a house or their kids not being able to buy a house. I want houses for Australians first. We're going to build 500,000 more homes. We're going to provide support through stopping foreign buyers for 2 years from competing in auctions against Australian citizens. And we're going to make sure that people can achieve the dream of home ownership again. So the composition of the program will explain, but when Labor is bringing in likely more than 2 million people,
why can't you explain it? Why can't you? You've announced a target. Why can't you explain how you're going to do it now?
We'll explain the breakdown of the numbers, but the point is that we bring it down by 25%. It's at 185,000 a year now. We bring it down to 140,000 in years 1 and 2. It goes up to 160,000 by year 4. And what it does is it creates about 100,000 new homes, or frees up 100,000 homes for Australian citizens. I'm not going to tolerate a situation where young Australians have lost the dream of home ownership, which is the reality of this government.
No one has to leave the country. You're just not making them a citizen.
It goes to the previous questions about abolishing the government's investment in green energy and whether or not that makes Australia a bad place to invest. She said
they probably should. I'm just saying his policy doesn't.
Of scrapping investment vehicles.
He's not talking about the NOM. NOM tells you how many people in the country.
Your Shadow Minister said it'd be hard to unwind because it could pose a sovereign risk. We're conscious of making sure Australia is seen as a good place to invest. Are you doing exactly what she feared, and that is sending a signal that Australia is not a good place to invest?
Well, Sarah, I was a minister in the Howard government. I was the assistant treasurer in the Howard government. I've been a senior minister in 4 administrations, and I've watched 7 prime ministers, good and bad. I have put budgets together, and I've worked very hard on the Expenditure Review Committee and the National Security Committee for a long period of time. I understand what we need to do to manage our economy effectively, and creating sovereign risk is not
that
part
lefty
of that.
Jane Hume doesn't know what she's talking about.
Programs, but in a program where the
government won't be in a future cabinet
money, but not created
a single new home for
Australians.
Yes, but there are hundreds of houses that are being under construction at the moment. What happens to
the government spin? They promised 1.2 million homes.
What happens?
They're 3 years
well,
into
let me just. That's a question. What happens to the houses that are currently under construction?
Well, they continue to construction. Of course they do, to completion. Of course they do. But let's be honest. The government promised 1.2 million homes. We're at the end of this term of government, 3 years in. How many homes built? Not one. Not one is built and occupied. It is a complete and utter outrage, and there'll be people watching tonight whose kids or grandkids can't get into a house.
Would it be fair? Would it be fair, Mr. Dutton, to acknowledge to the audience that that policy was held up for a long time in the Senate by the Greens?
No, it'd be fair to point out that the government promised, like they did the $275 price reduction in electricity on 97 occasions before the election. It'd be true to say that it's another broken promise of the Albanese government.
Peter Dutton, you're about to enter into your first election campaign as leader. I want you to give me a single word that you think defines you that would be attractive to the voters.
I hate these questions.
Determined and dedicated for our country.
That's not a word.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you so much, Sarah.
Now, we didn't catch there the what they said about tax.
As we head into a federal election, the ABC has been asking what's important to you before you go to the polls.
Thousands of you have written into the ABC to have your say and tell us what.
So 25 cents off a litre of petrol or a $5 weekly coffee. This really is a cost of living election. The question is, what do voters want more?
Neither party cares about either of those policies, yet that's what people talk about.
The Leader of the Opposition, Peter Dutton, joins me now, fresh from the floor. Congratulations
so this is not
on
live.
your speech.
To see what they said about.
It's good to have you back in the studio. Now, you have taken the highly unusual step for a Liberal leader of rejecting rather than offering tax cuts.
Here it is.
Can you confirm that there'll be nothing further offered on income tax cuts during the election campaign?
Well, Sarah, I'd love to introduce tax reform and tax cuts, but the Labor Party has racked up what we now see in the budget papers
going for the debt
of about $1.2 trillion of debt. So we have to be realistic and understand the constraints.
That doesn't stop him spending money.
Put forward
he has to be responsible, but $3 billion for a new
relief,
$3 billion for defence and $9 billion for health, and
which starts in 15 months. It's about 70 cents a day. Our plan is to reduce tax in another part of the family budget, and that, of course, is in relation to the halving of the fuel excise, which we think will be beneficial across the economy for pensioners and for uni students and for families running kids around and for small businesses. So we think there's better economic bang for the buck. And it's also not baked in as a structural spend in the budget.
And to be clear, so that's an absolute no for the campaign.
We have a great desire at some stage when we clean up Labor's mess, but we won't be able to provide tax cuts during this campaign. And I think, frankly, the Labor Party's LAW tax cuts are a bit of a cruel hoax on Australians.
Let me just ask you about the fuel excise, because recently you described that particular excise in 2023, and the Prime Minister quoted this in Parliament today. He said, you said that it was costly and able to be gamed by the oil giants. So was it Labor's surprise tax cut that changed your mind on this?
No, I think actually there's a great quote today around Jim Chalmers, who said it's fantastic for there to be relief at the bowser for families. He said that 2 years ago. So
what about you, though?
The point, I guess I just make that content.
Ah, well. Let's give our... Did you want to see the rest of that?
No, that's good. I think I've seen and heard enough to disappointment for tonight.
I was trying to run through the different pluses and minuses. Now, the problem is I came into this with my tax hat on. I mean, I work for the Australian Taxpayers Alliance. I've been ranting about the need for tax cuts for a long time, but especially in the last couple of years, productivity has slumped for 8 years in a row. We've been in a per capita recession for most of the last 2 years. We need to do something to kickstart productivity, and there really are only a couple of things that work. I mean, there's lots of things politicians say. They link everything to productivity in the hope that it tricks people into supporting their latest boondoggle. But income tax cuts was one of the most obvious, because it's not only would kickstart productivity, but you could get elected on saying that. And I'm just so fucking disappointed by the Labor comes out with income tax cuts. Liberals say they will repeal them and really do nothing else structural. Dutton was gloating, oh, don't worry, our tax cut isn't structural, it's just permanent, you know, you don't get to keep it. He just gloated then. And I got a series of different issues where I'm contrasting Liberal to Labor here, and in the tax column, Labor has the better policy. I don't want to say that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't come in with a pure tax hat like you.
I know I've got other things on my list, right? So I'd say,
yeah,
you know, I still think the Liberals probably win on balance of all the issues, and we have compulsory preferential voting. So I mean, they still have a way to. This is why they can just screw over people like me and still get the votes, because where else do you go? Look, they're better on energy, they're better on immigration, and they're better on economic regulations.
And you know, and Dutton is going to be a firmer leader against China and so on like that. Like when it comes to dealing internationally and, you know, being able to talk to guys like Trump and Xi and anyone else, I think Dutton, while he might not be the greatest sort of public speaker and orator, I think he's going to garner a little bit more respect than Albo the handsome boy in those meetings. And
I'm not sure it makes too much difference either way. Realistically, people either like us or don't like us for our strategic position. I don't think people in China or America sit there going, oh,
the leader.
Albanese.
No, Trump loves Scotty from marketing, and Trump got along great, apparently. I mean,
that's a terrible indictment on Trump's judge of character. It's
yeah, I think on the tax thing, I was really hoping for some proper ballsy tax reform.
So let's put aside what we wanted. How do you think this will play? So he's gone for just saying he gives up on tax, but he's going to try and get energy prices down through gas policy. I mean, that seemed to be the only other new thing. Well, that was the only new thing he said, right? He was going to
petrol prices and gas, domestic gas stuff. It was all part of the energy thing. And I suppose gas is part of the energy. Like, was that the fuel excise thing that is in with his energy policy?
I just put that as like a tax, part of taxes. And that's also the short-term one. And that came out this morning. But I mean, in this speech, I think the only new thing was, and I don't even know if this is new, requiring the gas companies to sell to Australia first to keep Australia's gas price low and take away the international fluctuations.
He's still hobbled by the Green lobby and by the left, and, you know, the Matt Keane type people and the Alex Hawke type people in the party, because he's like saying to Sarah there, yeah, renewables are great, we really love renewables, but we also need other stuff. I'm like, shut up. You got a comment here. Sally put on here, renewables are fantastic. Yeah. Like, oh my goodness. So.
How do you think this will play? Well.
How
Dutton
are
and
they
the
going to
Liberals
play?
basically said they give up on tax. They give up. They're letting Labor take tax. They're trying to match Labor with spending. Anything you can spend on health, we can spend it too. Labor says Medicare, Liberals say Medicare plus 10%.
If
extra $50 million on spending here and spending there. So they're trying to match Labor on spending, doing worse than Labor on tax, which means they're going to make no difference on really debt or deficits. So they've gone all in, it seems to me, on energy policy. Nuclear and gas is the big point of differentiation where they are, I think, clearly better than Labor. Is that going to be enough?
You think they're clearly better than Labor, but it depends on how your Teals and those sorts of people are going to push out and demonize gas. That's when you say how it's going to play, it's not a purely people as individual assessment units are going to look at it. It's like, how is the left-wing media going to spin it? How is it going to try and cajole people? How is it going to demonize and fearmonger them into certain points of view? And things like gas have been demonized, even though they're like, if you really care about carbon, gas is so much cleaner than coal. But they say, no, gas is the enemy. I think that's the issue. What are people's actual perceptions of gas? Are people cool with gas? People do like to cook with gas. People are pretty ticked off that gas has had shortages, that they can't install gas appliances, that they're being pushed onto electrification of everything. So hopefully there's enough sentiment out there that people go, thank freaking goodness that we can keep our gas.
Cooking with gas, as people say.
Cooking with gas. We've got induction here and it's woeful. So
you think there's because this is, I wonder how this will play politically. Some people were saying it's going to be electoral suicide if he doesn't match or improve the tax cuts. I don't know if that's true. I kind of hope it's true because it indicates that the public wants tax cuts and it gives a set of incentives for future politicians to give us tax cuts. I don't know if it's true. Like, is he going to get away with just giving?
I think people will like the petrol thing. People will like the petrol thing. People hate going to the Bowser. They hate the cost of that. They do know that there's huge costs, and you've got multiple different parties running the same messaging. Libertarians have been pushing a fuel thing. I know Jordan down in Victoria ran the whole, we're going to go pay the fuel excise thing off for a day campaign. Pauline's already pushing out going, look, they've half adopted one of our policies because we said we should do it for 2 years and then reassess. And they've said they'll do it for 1 year. So, like you said, if they move an inch in the right direction, I'll praise them for the inch. So Pauline's taking credit for that and saying, good on them.
I saw Jordan Ditloff also taking credit for the same. So I guess everyone's jumping in to say they stole our policy, but that's I think with that the killer is it's temporary, and I wonder. I mean, this just really goes to the average IQ of the voters. So are people going to take a temporary tax cut, trade it off for a permanent tax increase that's nearly the same value and happens every year?
That on the studies, right? And when people are under financial pressure and stress, they don't make good long-term rational decision making. Like that's been studied. When people are under financial duress, that's why poor people get poorer and they gamble, and they gamble more because they're desperate and they think, I need to just do something. And so they actually are really bad at thinking about long-term benefits of decision making. That's why they don't invest in getting a house and
I haven't looked at that study, but I'm just immediately calling bullshit. Sounds like a communist study. It sounds like something an academic would come up with, and of course academia is just
they did a study where they
did a study. Dangerous sentence. I almost always
no, I read through it and thought it had merit. They basically sort of just gave people money, or they didn't give people money, and it was I think the UBI thing didn't come out completely. I think it was trying to push a UBI thing. So you're right. It sounds like communism.
The Finland UBI experiment showed that it really didn't work. People who were given the UBI ended up poorer at the end of it.
This wasn't a UBI thing, but it was just showing, it's like kind of that fight or flight thing. And so once your brain's in shock mode, anyway.
Look, I understand the theory. The theory is very enticing for people who want to make a case that we always have to give poor people more money. But I spent years living in third world countries this is actual poverty. What Australian poverty?
People will take the bird in the hand versus the two in the bush. That's what I'm saying. They'll go, yep, I will take my $14 off my tank of fuel today. And, in 12 months' time, government policies are going to change. Interest rates are going to change. Everything's going to change. 12 months' time is 12 months' time away. That's forever. So I will take the saving today because I'm desperate today.
Perhaps we've incentivized such short-term thinking that is true now. I just note that short-term thinking doesn't happen when people are infinitely poorer than they are in Australia. So I don't think poverty causes it, but maybe just our bad attitude causes it. It just occurred to me though, and I know you have to jump off in a couple of minutes, so we'll wrap the whole thing up in a few minutes. But it just did occur to me, one advantage of voting for the Liberal parties or the Liberal Party winning this election is they won't be able to repeal Labor's income tax cuts.
Because
both the Greens and Labor want income tax cuts. It's only the Liberals that want higher income taxes. Can you believe I said that sentence aloud? I mean, okay, but the Greens and Labor want the income taxes to be lower. It's only the Liberals that want the income taxes to be higher. How will they get it through the Senate?
Well, yeah, that's the issue. And I'd imagine even if you get a strong right-wing crossbench, they're probably not going to vote to put taxes back up either. If you get the Libertarians and One Nations and so on, trumpets, UAP, whoever.
We ran through this, I think, on our first ATA live stream. It's nearly impossible that there'll be a right-wing control of the Senate after this election, which is why so much of this commentary on the election is a bit of it's a cheat, right? It's a pantomime, because realistically, it's probably going to be the Greens' balance of power. If it's not, it'll be David Pocock or Lambie, best case scenario, which is just a nuts world to live in.
Fatima Payman.
Yeah, she might be in there. It could be Fatima Payman, get a partial balance of power. It'll probably be the Greens, though. But I mean, even if we get a couple of good minor rights in, they'll probably come at the expense of the Liberals. So that doesn't get you over the line of that 39 votes you need.
And Queensland's screwed, right? With you've got Rennick versus Roberts versus Libertarian like Jim and Lachlan and stuff. Like, there's too many on the right, and they're overlapping each other, and you won't get them all in.
We definitely won't get them all in. I mean, the fear is that splitting the vote might get none of them in. I think Malcolm Roberts will get over the line. That's my guess for Queensland. Look, I like Reddick. I'd like to see him in. I'm not when I give my commentary on what I think will happen. It's not my preference on what I think will happen. It's what my best guesstimate is from watching politics for a while. I think Malcolm will get over the line. What I'll be interested to see is whether he replaces the third Liberal or the second Labor. Because that'll make a difference, right? If you want to improve the balance in the Senate. But anyway, we're getting a bit off tangent, but it occurs to me that if one of the worst things about the Liberals is that they want to put up income tax. Currently, Labor and the Greens are on the record of wanting the lower income tax. So Labor and Greens might not support the Liberals' income tax increase. I can't believe I'm saying that sentence. Can people believe that? Anyway,
we talk about hung parliaments and so on. It's going to be pretty hung if Peter manages to get a majority, but has no balance of control in the Senate, and he's got to negotiate with the Greens on a constant basis to get anything done. Like,
he won't negotiate with them. He'll just put up what he wants, and the Greens will say no, and then nothing will get done unless it gets done bipartisan, right? So it'll be much easier for Dutton to deal with the Labor than it would the Greens. And look, Labor sometimes will be strong-armed. Like they'll be able to be pressured on very politically popular issues to potentially wade through the Liberal policy. So
just don't want to be a lame duck parliament that can't get anything done.
Oh, it mostly will be. I mean, anything good they want to do will be voted down. I mean, this was inevitable years ago. Basically, ever since Malcolm Turnbull and the Greens changed the voting rules in the Senate, the Liberals basically can't get good things done anymore. They can only get things done that Labor likes, which generally isn't good things.
Oh, yeah.
So
I like the theory.
It makes a bit of
a
bit of a pantomime of an election, given that everything he says he'll do, he probably just won't be able to do, and unless Labor waves it.
He's like a Greens campaigner then. They can say whatever they like because they can't actually do any of it.
Well, they still need to tell us what they want to do, but yeah, just have to.
Yes. No, sorry, I do have to run. I've got another show at 9:00, the Awakened Aussies show here on X, on Rumble, on YouTube, wherever you find
that's 10 minutes, right? Because that's 9 o'clock Sydney time.
9 p.m. Sydney time. That's in 10 minutes. So I've got to go switch to the other studio and make a cup of tea and get logged in for that one.
All right. And where can people find that? Well, I'm about to log this off now. So everyone who's watching this, if you want to are you going to be talking budget or something else? Or
yes. Heavily on budget and whatever other topics of the week we stumble across. So we'll be getting on.
Well, I might just hack your stream and sort of sneak in there and start throwing tomatoes. But
just jump in on camera, man. Like you can come join us for more banter.
Well, there you go. For the people listening now, if you haven't
Awakened
Aussies.
Awakened Aussies.
So I'll be over there as well, and Dave will be there in 10 minutes or so. So we should let Dave go. So thank you for tuning in and suffering through that.
Appreciate it. Misery loves company, so I appreciate it.
All right, send me a link. I'll chat soon.
All right, thanks, mate. Bye.
Cheers. All right. Well, I don't have that much extra to say, and I am going to jump off. But maybe I'm reading it wrong. And what Dutton announced on energy and generally the Liberal Party policy on energy and on regulation, I think is preferable. But they are certainly not going with the strategy of winning on tax cuts. Right? So clearly that is not the approach they've decided to go with. Much to my disappointment, maybe they know some polling that I don't, although it's still disappointing because I'm not supporting tax cuts just for polling reasons. I support them because I think it's genuinely the right thing to do. And I think Australia desperately needs some serious tax cuts. And we put out a bunch of very serious, very interesting, affordable, and productivity enhancing ideas at the ATA. And it looks like so far everything's off the table except for the small Labor Party tax cut, which is now has already been passed, right? So it's not even in something in the offing. It's already there. So I found that the situation we're in on tax to be highly disappointing. It's nice to see them saying something good on energy, but I'm just going to go and cry into my Weet-Bix now. Anyway, thank you everyone for tuning in. Thanks for being here. This is put together by the Australian Taxpayers Alliance. Taxpayers, of course, that's why we wanted the lower tax. That's why we always will. Taxpayers.org.au. If you want us to be able to keep doing this, please consider becoming a member. Our normal routine here is Mondays and Thursdays. Today's a Thursday, so we normally do something on Thursday anyway, but it'll normally be unpacking a new policy suggestion, which I have in my back pocket, but I'm running out of puff. So I've got to do that one for next Monday. So come back, join us Mondays, Thursdays. Normally it's 8:30 Sydney time, unless there's something big on like a budget. And normally I am joined by my co-host, Brian the Beast Marlowe. But come and join us then. Until then, thank you for tuning in. My name is John Humphreys, and I will see you next time.